How's it going, everyone? Schaefer here, and today I'm going to do a build guide for my Oathbreaker Melee Warlock. I had a lot of fun with this build. I used it for pretty much the entire game and I never regretted it at all. It's very versatile, it's a lot of fun, it does a lot of damage, and if you do it the way I did it, you can be very, very tanky. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Enjoy. So with that introduction out of the way, and before I actually go into how to build my character, there's just one question that you might have, or query that you might have, which is, why would I go Oathbreaker Warlock rather than just Warlock? And the reason for that is, as an Oathbreaker Warlock, I feel like you have more utility to start with, which I think is a great way to play, because you just have smites and heals and various other spells that you would not normally get access to as a pure Warlock. But more importantly, as an Oathbreaker Warlock, you actually gain an additional attack, so you get to attack 3 times. As a pure Warlock, you don't get that without taking an additional feat to potentially give you an additional attack based on the weapons that you're using. For example, two-handed weapons or polearms. I think you can take either polearm mastery or two-handed weapons. And to demonstrate what I mean, I'll show now basically the 2 examples. My current build is the Oathbreaker, and then as a level 12 pure Warlock, just so you can see the differences there. Okay, so a little bit on how that works in combat. So basically what happens is you get 3 attacks per turn on a standard single action, so it's just one action without haste. We get 3 hits, so we get the first hit, then we get the hit from our pacted weapon, because there's pacted weapons from level 5 Warlock. We get a second attack, so we get to go again, and we get the Dark One's Blessing here, so we get the temporary hit points, and then we actually get a full third attack, which is the still using our full attack bonus. So it's like we don't lose anything at all. For each of these attacks you hit for the piercing damage, which is the weapon, thunder damage, which I think is also the weapon here, yep. Fire damage, which is currently my gloves, and also an additional 5 damage from Aura of Hate. So basically every time I hit them, I do an additional 5 piercing damage, which is pretty good overall. So there's a lot of extra damage. So let's take a look at this, how it works if you're just a level 12 Warlock. So the weapon is painted, which does give us a second attack from level 5 onwards. So we can hit him once, and here we'll do 16 piercing damage, which is from our charisma modifier as well, because we now have Life Drinker, which, sorry, the 5 necrotic damage from Life Drinker. So 16 from the weapon, thunder and fire from the same as before, the weapon and the gloves I have on, and then you'll see the 5 extra additional damage from necrotic, which is the I think it's called Life Drinker. Yeah, which is Life Drinker here. Your melee attacks deal additional necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier, so at the moment it is +5 because it's 20. So we get +5 additional damage. Then we hit him again, and that's it. That is it. Unless you take a feat, for example, if you're wearing like a polearm, you could take polearm mastery to get an additional attack. Although polearm mastery, the attack is not a full attack, or at least a full attack bonus in terms of the damage. Damage isn't as high. Certainly wouldn't do this kind of damage, although it would apply, or should I think apply, the 5 charisma modifier. I thought it would actually work here with the trident, but apparently it did not. So I hope that helps clear up a little bit as to why I maybe picked Oathbreaker as opposed to pure level 12 Warlock. Again, the utility, the additional attack per turn, and just the smites as well included. I just think it's a better option. I don't think it's worth going all the way to level 12 simply for Life Drinker. I just don't think it is. And yes, you gain access to some higher level spells, but honestly, as a Warlock, you have like 3 spell slots, maybe 4 spell slots at max level, and that's really not a lot. You're not really going to be using a lot of those spells at all, or very regularly. And yes, you can use them again after a short rest, which is really handy. Again, I just didn't think it was worth it. I didn't think the value was there when the base damage can be so much higher just as a Oathbreaker Paladin with the 3 attacks per turn rather than 2. So now we can look at how we would actually build this character, or how I built this character, and there's two ways to do that. You can go a more tanky build, so maybe wearing heavy armor and shields, which is the option I went for, or you can go for one that doesn't specialize in heavy armor and doesn't use shields, maybe a bit lighter armored, but you might be dual wielding a weapon rather than one-handing it and using a shield. I went for the tankier option, and it paid off big, in my opinion. A character became very, very difficult to kill. Very, very difficult. She has a lot of staying power, and she just deals a lot of damage as well. She has a lot of utility. Generally speaking, I think the tankier option for this Oathbreaker build is superior. So I will show that one, but I'll also include the options in there if you wanted to go with a less tankier build. So starting things off here with level 1, it's important here to make your decision. Are you going to be a tanky warlock or a squishy warlock? And this is because if you pick Paladin as your starting class, you get martial weapons proficiency along with medium, heavy armor, and shield proficiencies. You do not get these if Paladin is your secondary class. So if you start with Warlock level 1 and go Paladin level 2, you will not get heavy armor, medium armor, and shields. Or martial weapons for that matter. You don't get any of those. So if you want to be more tanky, like I did, then you want to start with Paladin. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Start with Paladin, so here we go. When you pick your oath, honestly here your oath really doesn't make it that much difference because we're going to be breaking it anyway. That's the point of an Oathbreaker. And under abilities, you want to make your abilities essentially favor charisma. So we can actually drop strength, we don't need it. Constitution, I think, is fine here at 14. Actually, 15. Let's do Charisma 17, Wisdom 12. You want to put your +2 assigned bonus into Charisma to make it 17, and your +1 bonus into Constitution to make it 15. We will later make Constitution 16, and we will make Charisma 20, obviously. And actually, I've got a spell point left here, sorry, ability point left here, so I'm going to put it into Dexterity for Dexterity saving throws, just so we get it, and also extra armor if we're not wearing stuff that reduces that. Here, your proficiencies, doesn't really matter what you want to go with any of them. Persuasion, Intimidation, History, and Athletics is how I set mine up. And yeah, let's move on from there. Jump in here at level 2. At this point, you can essentially just go straight up Warlock. You can add a class, and you go Warlock. And from here on, we're going to go 5 levels into Warlock. You can pick any cantrips you want. I went with Eldritch Blast and Blade Ward. Subclass. Now, for me, subclass is the Fiend. And that's because you get the Dark One's Blessing, which every time you kill a hostile creature, you get, at this point in time, 4 temporary hit points. That goes up as you level up. Your granted spells or your gained spells, these can be anything that you find useful. Expeditious Retreat could be useful, for example. Arms of Hadar, also not terrible, but ultimately it doesn't really matter because you're not going to be using that much. I had Hellish Rebuke because it's a reaction and it's actually quite powerful. And I'm actually going to go with Expeditious Retreat because I think that's fine as well. So we're on to level 3 here, but level 2 Warlock. So we're going to stick with Warlock. Again, your selected spell here can be anything that you see that you deem is good for you. Protection from good and evil is okay. Burning Hands, again. Charm Person, all these are okay. So pick whatever you want to pick. Again, it doesn't really matter that much, I don't think. I'm going to go Protection from good and evil at this point. Actually, no, I may not. I think I may go Armor here instead. Now, for your Eldritch Invocation, you still want to be specializing, or at least putting an emphasis on Eldritch Blast. It's still a great spell and still very powerful because we're still going to be leveling up our Charisma. So even at the end of the game, Eldritch Blast is really good. So Agonizing Blast is just great to complement that, because we can add our Charisma modifier to the damage. So we go Agonizing Blast, and you could do anything here, maybe Devil's Sight for additional dark sight. Go on with the shadows here, this is quite handy, although arguably later on didn't work too well. So, I mean, here I'm going to go with Fiendish Vigor, which allows me to, as a spell for free, give myself temporary hit points. So if you need to do this before the start of a fight, it's great to have those additional hit points, and it did come in useful. The rest here are fine, and you can choose to replace any spells you want. I'm going to at this point. We're just going to keep going. Level 3 Warlock. This one's a big one for us here. We're going to pick a spell. Again, anything you want to do is fine. Invisibility is really good. Mirror Image adds to tankiness if you wish to use it. Misty Step is also really great. I'm actually going to pick Mirror Image. Now, a Pact Boon. This is the really important part because this is where we take Pact of the Blade, which allows us to essentially be a melee warlock. Because now we can bind any weapon we want, including summoning them, and it makes us proficient in that weapon. So we're going to pick up this. We get Pact of the Blade and bind Pact Weapon. So if you have a weapon that you want to bind, you can use it here, or Pact of the Blade lets you summon a weapon type and also bind it to you. Okay, next level. Let's go. We're level 5 here, but only level 4 Warlock. Again, we get cantrips. Minor Illusion here is fine, I think. You could also use Mage Hand. Mage Hand is really useful for taking things that you can't necessarily get to, like out of your reach. I used it many times to open chests or throw things that were hidden behind doors. Quite useful to have. So any one of these I think are fine, whichever you prefer. I went with Minor Illusion. Sorry. Spells, again, anything that you think is necessary. I'm going to go with probably Invisibility or Misty Step. I think I end up picking up both, so we'll go with Invisibility to start with. Now, as our first feat, you just want to do Ability Improvement, and you can essentially just go 2 here, straight into Charisma to get it to 19, and move on. Alright, level 6. Another big level for us here, because we're now level 5 with our Warlock, which means we get Deepened Pact. Deepened Pact is very good because now, as Blade Pact holders, we gain our additional attacks. So now we get 2 attacks per turn, which is huge. It's a massive damage increase, and it's just great. So it's good. Here you can pick anything. I picked Misty Step, or you can pick Counterspell. I think both of these are really good. I'll actually pick Misty Step for this one. But again, pick any spell here that you think that you would like to use. I would recommend Misty Step or Counterspell. Eldritch Invocation. So we get another one here. At this point, it doesn't really matter too much. You could get Repelling Blast, so you can also push creatures away from you. You can get one with the Shadows here, which allows you to essentially stealth if you're obscured, which is really strong. You could use Devil's Sight here to gain additional darkness into both magical and non-magical. Repelling Blast I would recommend. I just think it's a great spell and a great addition to your kit. You could also use Mine of the Mire, which gives you the ability to cast Slow as a Warlock spell. But for this one, let's just go with Repelling Blast. I think that's fine. So, level 7. At level 7, we no longer need to put any more levels into Warlock. Doesn't make any sense at this point. And honestly, we don't need to. So here we can go, Here we can go straight back into Paladin and start taking Paladin. Now it's good because it's level 2 Paladin, which means we now get our smites. So level 6 and level 7 are pretty big for us because level 6 we get 2 attacks and level 7 we gain smite. So now we can add smite to all of our swings. And we want to pick a fighting style. Now, depending on which way you want to go, depends on which of these you wish to go for. You've got Great Weapon Fighting if you're going with a one-handed or two-handed build. So if you were going for squishier, you didn't want to be as defensive as I went, Great Weapon Fighting would be a great one for you to have. You can also do dueling if you're using finesse weapons or versatiles in one hand. Protection is actually not terrible. When you have a shield impose disadvantage on an attack against your allies, you are within 1.5 meters of. It's kind of good for protecting your allies. I went with defense just for the extra armor class. I wanted to be really tanky in this, and so that extra 1 armor class I think was great, so that's what I went with. Alright, level 3 Paladin. So level 3 Paladin, we get some additional spells. These are based on your Oath spells at the moment. So this Vow, this Abjure, the Bane, and the Hunter's Mark. These will not be the same because you are an Oathbreaker. And we'll have a look at those afterwards because this is a new character and you can't be... Well, it's a new build and you can't be Oathbreaker from level 1, unfortunately. You do have to go out of your way to get it. Now we also get some prepared spells, so we get some spells from the Paladins, and things like Cure Wounds is great, Bless is also really nice. Compelled Duel I found to be really useful. On occasion, I didn't use it that much. When I did use it, I did like it, because I was being tanky, forced them to fight me, but that was really useful. And you have things like Wrathful Smite, Thunderous Smite. These are great just to have, because you'll find that sometimes enemies are immune to Radiant, or they have a Radiant Reflect ability, which basically does all the damage you did, Radiant damage back at you 2 times, and it's not fun to deal with. So I definitely advise picking up Thunderous Smite and Wrathful Smite just to have those in your toolkit. But feel free here to pick any of these spells that make sense for you. Searing Smite is also a good one, but as I am a Tiefling, I also get a similar ability for free anyway, just for being a Tiefling. So, don't really need it. Alright, on to level 9 now. So level 9 we get Lay on Hands. This is the same regardless of whether you're an Oathbreaker or not, you still get Lay on Hands, and you can still use Lay on Hands to heal yourself or your allies. Prepared spells, again, it's the same set of spells, so nothing too special here, just if you want to swap them out, now's the time. Otherwise, we'd go for a feat. Again, ability improvement. I'm going to go 20 Charisma and 16 in Constitution to get that +3 in Constitution, give us a little bit extra health, and obviously max out my Charisma. Okay, so here at level 10 is a big one again for us, because now we're level 5 Paladin and we're level 5 Warlock. What that does is it gives us extra attack, which is that 3rd attack that I showed you before. So now we can attack 3 times per turn, which is either 3 smites per turn or 3 standard swings per turn, whichever it is that you want to do. We also get additional spells like Magic Weapon, Branding Smite, we get Lesser Restoration, and we get Aid if we want to, just in case you want to get these. Again, these Oath spells don't matter too much because I have you Oathbreak eventually anyway. So here we can obviously change them out, put any level 2s you want in, keep the level 1s. Feel free to change them as you see fit. I think Magic Weapon's really good. Branding Smite's also really nice, although Radiant damage is basically the same as your standard Smites, so not super useful, and it's a concentration as well, so you have to maintain the spell. Restoration is always good, and Aid gives you an additional max HP, and it does stack with temporary hit points, because many temporary hit points don't stack with each other. They overwrite, but Aid does stack, so if you want a little bit extra health, you can go for Aid, but these are completely up to you. I kind of left them as they are here. I think those are the best spells to go with. And let's move on. Alright, level 11 here. So we got Aura of Protection. This is the same, regardless of whether you're an Oathbreaker or not, you get Aura of Protection. And in my opinion, it's really good. Increases your saving bonuses and your allies, which is just great. Makes you really, really tough to deal with. Again, the spells are the same. Other than that, nothing special. Finally, level 12. So level 12 is, again, not too special. We don't get that much additional spells, that much additional stuff. We get an additional spell slot, which is nice. Obviously increased health. And we do get Relentless Avenger, which if you hit an enemy with an opportunity attack, your movement speed is increased by 4.5 on your next turn. It is what it is. It's not great, but it's not bad either. Let's take a quick look at the differences between your standard Oath and your Oathbreaker. The most obvious are probably these class actions. You get Spiteful Suffering, Control Undead, and Dreadful Aspects. So those are replaced. You also get this one at level 12. And for level 12, it's a big one for Oathbreakers, not so much the Oath we had on before, which I think was Wrath, which one it was now. Either way, this is essentially your level 12 aura of hate. So you and any nearby fiends and undead gain an additional 5 piercing damage dealt with melee weapons. So this is essentially the life drinker ability that you get as a level 12 warlock, except instead of necrotic damage, it's just an additional 5 piercing damage. So you still gain the bonus of life drinker as a paladin, as an Oathbreaker paladin with aura of hate. And yes, it does affect enemies. So if you're near enemy fiends or enemy undead, it does also give them plus 5 piercing damage. But honestly, that didn't really seem to make any difference to me. I was really, really tanky at this point. I think I ended at 27 AC total because I was using a shield. I had that defense perk from level 2 paladin. And so overall, I didn't notice the difference here. But for me, it equalized out the damage from being a level 12 warlock with life drinker. Okay, so now to take a quick look at some of the gear I ended up with. This is endgame gear, I would say. This is certainly some of the stuff I found in Chapter 3. So, spoiler warnings for those of you who have not got there or don't wish to be spoiled. You might want to skip to the end or just stop now, because I'm going to be showing some gear that is only available in Chapter 3. As you can see, I ended up with 27 AC, 21 from armor, 3 from my shields, 1 from Baldur's favor, 1 from defense, and it also says 1 from defense. I don't know why it says 1 from defense twice, but it is what it is. So I ended up with 27 AC, which made me very, very tanky. Now, this was obviously towards the end of Chapter 3, but even throughout Chapter 2, with the gear I had on, I had a lot of armor. So I was still very tanky in Chapter 2, and I think it followed through quite nicely into Chapter 3. So I never at any point felt like I wasn't at what I wanted to be, which was durable and tanky. So that's exactly how it played out, and I loved it. And obviously this shield I think looks fantastic, and so does this trident here. So just have a quick look at some of this gear. So here we have the Helm of Baldur, which heals me for 2 points of health every turn. I get 1 additional armor class and saving throws, which is pretty good, I thought. I'm immune to stuns, and I cannot be critically hit. Now this is a medium armor, so if you were going with a less tanky version, if you started as level 1 warlock as opposed to level 1 paladin, you wouldn't be able to wear this because it's heavy armor, so you wouldn't be able to wear this, unfortunately. Next up, I went with a Cloak of Displacement. At the beginning of my turn, enemies gain disadvantage on attack rolls against me. Now this is every single turn, so this was fantastic. So not only do they have to hit AC 27, they're now hitting with disadvantage, so naturally a lot of enemies missed. And if you watch my playthrough, there are many times when I'm surrounded and nothing can hit me, or very rarely it hits me because of just how avoided this cloak and my AC made me. So yeah, I was really happy with this. Next up is Helldusk Armor. Helldusk Armor gives you proficiency with the armor, so even if you were a squishy warlock, so if you went with warlock level 1 instead of paladin, you could wear this armor, so that is a good thing. You get Infernal Retribution. When you succeed a saving throw, the caster receives burning for 3 turns. That happened a lot, so I have a lot of saving throws that are pretty good. So something would hit you, it would miss, and then you would set it on fire for 3 turns, which I thought was pretty fun. You also get Prime Aegis of Fire. You have resistance to fire damage and cannot be burned. As a tiefling who already has resistance to fire, that meant that fire damage does very little damage to me, which is great. You also take 3 less damage from all sources, so I can no longer be crit with the helmet, and I'm taking 3 less damage from everything, so that's fantastic. Next up we have the Flawed Helldusk Gloves. Now just as a note here, the Flawed Helldusk Armor is all available pretty early on in Chapter 2, and it's really good armor. I had most of it on for that chapter, which served me just well through those fights up until the end of Chapter 2. So highly recommend it if you're going with a tankier character. Obviously the chest piece is heavy, but doesn't give you proficiency, so you need to make sure you have heavy armor proficiency. But this one basically means that every single weapon attack deals an additional 1 to 4 fire damage. Your unarmed also deal an additional 1 to 4 necrotic if you're using unarmed attacks, and can possibly inflict bleeding, and you get 1 saving throw. Next up, I have the Boots of Persistence. These give you legendary mobility, which grants you freedom of movement and a long strider. Freedom of movement essentially means that my movement speed cannot be reduced by difficult terrain, spells, or magical effects. I cannot be paralyzed or restrained. So you can see where this is going. I've got a lot of AC, displacement, and I can't be stopped. So it makes me a very, 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 very tanky character. And Long Strider, which just increases my movement speed by 3 meters. And that, generally speaking, is good. And also 1 additional to saving throws. It's good to note this is medium armor again. So Warlocks, pure Warlocks cannot wear this armor, which is a shame. In my main hands, I have the Nairulna. I don't know how you pronounce that, but that's what it is. It's a versatile trident. Currently for me, actually let me pact it here so you can actually see what the real damage is. It's important to remember, your packed weapon, your weapon needs to always be packed because you lose a lot of damage if you don't, and you lose your 3rd attack if you don't have it pacted. And every time you rest, you need to repack your weapon. Not a short rest, a long rest. I found out the hard way that numerous times I kept forgetting to repack my weapon after a night. So make sure you do that. If you're summoning a weapon with Pact of the Blade, make sure you re-summon every day as well after a long rest. Otherwise, you'll end up with heavily reduced damage and you won't be able to attack 3 times. So it's 11 to 24 damage. I thought it was pretty good. 1d8, 1d6 plus 8 piercing, 1d6 thunder, which is part of the weapon. And the 1d4 fire is actually from the gloves. So it's actually from these Hell Dust gloves. It's the 1d4, 1 to 4 damage. You can obviously throw it, and it comes back to your weapon. It will be returned to your hand when thrown. So that's pretty good. You cannot be forced to drop the trident, so that's really good as well. There were many times when I did get disarmed, or at least my companions got disarmed, but you can't get disarmed with this one. Oops. And when thrown, the weapon creates an explosion. It deals 3 to 12 thunder damage in a 6 meter blast centered on the target. I never actually used this very much, but maybe I should have. You get a Veil of the Wind, so you gain an additional 3 meter bonus to movement speed and jump distance. So I'm moving 3 meters faster here and 3 meters faster here thanks to Long Strider. So we're moving pretty far. Equipping this weapon gives you immunity to falling damage as well, so you cannot be damaged by falling. Doesn't save you being thrown into the abyss though, but never mind. And you get the glowing as well. This object shines with a glow in a radius of 6 meters. Good to know that one with the shadows does not work. with this trident, you have to turn it off here in passive. You can actually turn the light off, and then you can use one with the shadows. I just never changed it out, honestly, after I'd got it. I left it where it was. And it's a +3 weapon enchantment. You also gain access to 2 additional spells. You gain this one, which is Zephyr Flash, 6 to 48 thunder damage, and inflicts bleeding, or can inflict bleeding. It's actually quite a nice ability. I used that a couple times. And you have Zephyr Break, which does 6 to 36 thunder damage, emits a powerful gale of wind that clears all clouds and pushes creatures back 5 meters, possibly inflicting off balance. So all round, really super weapon. I loved it. I'm using it with one hand, and it's still 11 to 24 damage. You hit 3 times with it. It does decent amounts of damage. It works. Next up, we have the shield, the Walking Fortress. It's what? Viconia's Walking Fortress. Armor class +3, one of the best shields in the game that I have found. You get Rebuke of the Mighty. When a foe hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction, dealing it 2 to 8 force damage and knock it prone unless they succeed a dexterity saving throw. Now this actually triggered quite a lot. I used this a lot once I'd got it. Super happy with it. You also gain Spell Guard, so you gain advantage on saving throws against spells. Spell attack rolls against you have disadvantage. So people have a really tough time hitting me. They have a really tough time hitting me with everything from melee to spells. You also get Reflective Shell. A protective shell envelops you. It reflects any projectiles targeted at you back to their point of origin. This lasts for 2 turns and is replenished on a short rest. This thing is kind of overpowered, I'm not going to lie. This reflects absolutely every projectile fired at you for those 2 turns, which is kind of fun. And you also get Warding Bond, so you can ward an ally. They gain resistance to all damage and a +1 bonus to their armor class and saving throws. However, you and the ally take the same amount of damage. If one of you gets hit, you share it. So, yeah. It is what it is. I put this on Karlach, for example. Karlach was my other frontline fighter. And with the way I built her, she was also pretty tanky with 23, 24 AC. with this warding on, and obviously I would go up to 28 AC, which would make me even more tanky, even harder to hit. So I like this. I like this combination. I thought this was a really good shield. Highly recommend you picking this one up if this is the way you want to go. When it comes to the rest, the ranged weapon is just a random bow that I found. The only reason I have this one, actually, is the Gontum Mail. This is purely here for Celestial Haste, so I can haste myself, which is great. Just great. It's only once per long rest, though, which is a bit of a shame, and only lasts for 5 turns. But regardless, I did use this to great effect on a number of times, so I would definitely recommend picking this up, or having a mage in your party that can haste. Haste is definitely something that's worthwhile. When it comes to these slots, I have Spell Savant Amulets, which gives me an additional level 2 spell slot, so I have 4 in total. The True Love's Embrace, actually, when I removed later, this isn't something you need. This was before I realized I had it on the shield anyway. I didn't need to use it. This was so I could use the warding bond with me and Karlach, but again, I realized it was on the shield, so I actually removed this for something else, probably for something like increased movement speed or something else that's in the toolkit. It doesn't really matter too much. And again, the ring here that gives me the Smooth Hands ring. It gives me invisibility as an illusion spell. You can pick this up as a warlock spell if you want. You don't have to take it from here. I ended up just using this one from the ring, and I picked up a different spell from the warlock spell list, but it really doesn't matter. You can put anything in these slots. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. And that's basically just it. That's how I ran with it. This was, in my opinion, a very successful build. My character was very, very tanky, very durable, and still dished out a serious amount of damage. When you think that things like Eldritch Blast still does the same amount of damage, because I still have 20 charisma, and it still lets you attack 3 times per turn. So you don't really lose that much. You know, the biggest thing you lose from not being a 12 warlock is Life Drinker, which adds 5 necrotic damage to your weapons. And honestly, you can get that with Aura of Hate anyway. Plus, you get the added bonus of Aura of Protection, which gives me +5 to saving throws, and also to nearby allies as well. I just think it's a no-brainer. I think the Warlock Oathbreaker is far superior to the standard Warlock build, and honestly, I had a lot of fun with this one. This was a fun build to use, and I definitely highly recommend it. So that's going to do it for this build video. I hope you gained something out of it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.